Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So, welcome to Sri Isopanisad Mantra 8. We we are still on the theme of knowing Krishna, and the only way to know Krishna, we have learned in the last few verses, is through devotion. Right? It is only by unalloyed devotional service that I am to be known, Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita. So all of the verses up until this mantra 8 has elaborated basically on that theme, knowing Krishna, how to know him, the process to know him, etc. So now in mantra 8, it actually number 7, mantra 7 and 8 are actually grouped together. So in mantra 7, next week we'll go, or the next class would be from 9 to 11, correct and incorrect knowledge for understanding the Ishvara. So the theme now will change, just so that you don't go looking for the correlation. Quick revision. What are the qualifications for achieving non-envious consciousness? So the answer is in mantra 6 and 7. That he who sees systematically everything in relationship to the Supreme Lord, who sees all living entities as his parts and parcels, and who sees the Supreme Lord within everything, never hates anything or any being. So envy and hatred become null and void when you see that each person is actually Krishna's property, right? So when you relate to every person in such a way, one's own heart becomes purified, because envy and hatred, become null and void. So one may ask, what about your enemy? Because in the material world, there are people who may not be so nice towards us. Sometimes it's so prevalent that some people may have untoward qualities, and they may come on our pathway, right? We may have to liaise with those people on a daily basis, live with them perhaps. They could be family members, etc., etc., etc. But Srila Prabhupada gave a very nice analogy of how we must live in this material world like a lotus. A lotus lives in muddy water. A long time ago, when I was at the Radharadhana temple visiting one morning, I always like to go for the morning program to that place because it has such a nice atmosphere. So when we're in Durban, we try our best to be there at that time. And lo and behold, one morning when I was sitting there and doing japa, during japa period, one devotee walked in with a whole bunch of fresh pink lotuses, fully bloomed lotuses. And I was thinking, I am in Chatsworth. Where do you, marigolds I would understand, but fully bloomed, fresh, real lotuses. And by that time, I had been to Vrindavan a few times. So I know what a fresh, new, real, not Chinatown lotus is. And I was so taken aback. So I spoke to this devotee because I knew him. And I said to him, Prabhu, where did you get this? Did you just like meet the goddess of fortune or something? Where did you get these lotuses from? And he said to me, there's actually a pond nearby, and I could come with him. So the next morning, I, sure enough, got to go with him to see how he plucks these lotuses. And they're for true. As Srila Prabhupada said, they grow in the filthiest of water. You actually see rats on the water, and it's really terrible. This devotee, to get the lotus for the pleasure of Sri Sri Radha Radhanath, he rolled his pants up and he waded knee high in that dirty water to go and pluck those lotuses. And of course, it was just amazing. That analogy is so apt. This material world is like that. There's dirt everywhere. There's dirt, Cheto Darpana Marjanam. In that verse, we understand that there's different levels of dirt in every individual's hearts. And sometimes it's more prevalent. So to live by this mantra, 6 and 7, one has to rise above the filthy water like the lotus and bloom beautifully with a heart devoid of envy and hatred, and see that this person is originally a pure, loving servant of Krishna's, but due to contact with unclean thoughts and habits in this material world, has become contaminated. But there is definitely hope. If this person gets Krishna's mercy, devotee's mercy, this person will shine brightly in his original form. So one has to see that there's a disease, and it can be the Krishna consciousness is the solution, so it can happen like that. So now we come to mantra 8. Saparya, Saparya Gachugram Akayam Avranam Ashnaviram Sudamapapavidam Kavir Manisi Paribu Swayambur Yata Yat Yata Tata Yatoritan Vyadada Shasvatibhya Samabhya. Translation. Such a person must factually know the greatest of all, the personality of Godhead, who is unembodied, omniscient, beyond reproach, without veins, pure and uncontaminated, the self sufficient philosopher who has been fulfilling everyone's desire since time immemorial. Right? So now this mantra 8, is telling us if we go through life with that type of vision of being able to sift out that there's original goodness and our own hearts become cleansed because we give up hatred and envy, then we'd be able to understand Krishna in his correct way. And in the purport by Srila Prabhupada, he begins by saying, here is a description of the transcendental and eternal form of the absolute personality of Godhead. The Supreme Lord is not formless. He has his own transcendental form, which is not at all similar to the forms of the mundane world. The forms of the living entities in this world are embodied in material nature and they work like any material machine. The anatomy of the material body must have a mechanical construction with veins and so forth, but the transcendental body of the Supreme Lord has nothing like veins. So here Prabhupada is stressing 2 points, that the Lord is a person who has a form. So how do you know that Krishna has a form?
As everything that's within and beyond our conception.
Good. Anything else, Avish? If we have a form and God doesn't have a form, it means that he's lacking in something and we are superior to him. So we have a form, but he must have a form, but it will be more magnanimous than our form. It will be more powerful than our form. Even in the Christian teachings, it is explained that man is made in the image of God. So there is a form. That form is spiritual. He has to have a form of Otherwise, it is that we have something that he doesn't have. However, his form is transcendental, Prabhupada is explaining here. It's transcendental to the material world. Ours, Prabhupada is explaining, has all of these things that are interdependent on each other, your veins, your nerves, your organs, etc. But Krishna's form does not need all of that. Therefore, you'll never see in any pastime of Krishna as a supreme personality of Godhead that he had high blood pressure or he needed a heart transplant, etc. However, if you study uh, all of the people that take birth in this world and claim to be Bhagavan, they'll claim that they are God, they're an incarnation of God, and you come to their demise or their departure from this world, you find that they had to succumb to being in wheelchairs, confined to a bed, unable to do their basic bodily functions without the assistance of other people helping them and or machines supporting their existence, etc., etc. So, like in the Bhagavad Gita that we had studied, Prabhupada had quoted Parasara Muni, and he explained that Bhagavan is full of all of the six opulences in full, all wealth, all beauty, all fame, all knowledge, all renunciation, etc. So this supreme personality of Godhead, when he comes into this world, he is not a hospital case. He doesn't need medical aid, etc. Yes, Prabhu. I'm coming. The question is that if God doesn't have blood, then how come Lord Nityananda, when he was struck by the clay pot by Jagai and Madai, then he started to bleed, and that made Lord Chaitanya upset. Now, I was just about to say before Prabhu asked the question about, then the question would come, then Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he is described to be so beautiful that what was his weapon when he came to this world? His weapon was his weapon when he came to this material world was his beauty. That's how beautiful Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came. When I was first asked this question, I was thinking, what was his weapon? The holy name, I had so many notions, but no, in the CC it's explained his weapon was his beauty. Just by seeing the beauty of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, people become attracted to him. Now, this beautiful form of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he entered into the deep, when he was exhibiting deep Krishna prem on the level of the gopis, especially when he was at the Gambira, he would bang his head against the wall, in separation from Krishna, and he would have marks, and he would see a rock and think it to be Govardhan Hill and would fall upon it, and he would become, covered in blood, so to speak. So then one may ask, how is that possible, right? Like Prabhu was asking, how is that possible? Let's read the rest of the purport. It is clearly stated here that he is unembodied, which means that there is no difference between his body and his soul, nor is he forced to accept a body according to the laws of nature as we are. In the material conditioned life, the soul is different from the gross embodiment and the subtle mind. For the Supreme Lord, however, there is never such difference between him, his body, and his mind. He is a complete whole, and his mind, body, and he himself are all one and the same. So, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, going back to the discussion of Prabhu's answering Prabhu's question, then Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he returned from Gaya, after his father had passed on, then Jagannath Mishra passed on, he went to Gaya, he did the rites. Then he became very much in a Vaishnav mood. Previously, he was debating with Vaishnavas, he was just a pandit, and he was giving the Vaishnavas a hard time in terms of logic and argument. But when he returned from Gaya, he began to exhibit a different mood of very pure devotion to Krishna and separation from Krishna and the gopis, etc. Now, at that time, they used to meet at Srivas Angam, at Srivas's house, right, at night. And they would have these nocturnal kirtans, closed door kirtans, right, because only the intimate associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu could attend those kirtans. Now, at one point in time, during that time, this is all to answer that point of the question, how come Chaitanya Mahaprabhu bled? Now, here Prabhupada is making the point that he is not forced to accept a body according to the laws of nature as we are. So he had a body of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It appeared that it bled, but he showed that that body of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that was supposedly bleeding was not of this material world, like Prabhupada is mentioning here. How? In Srivas Angam, there was an altar, and that was the altar of Lord Vishnu. So everyone would come and they would offer their worship to Lord Vishnu at that particular altar. So one day, what Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did was he went and he sat on that altar. And when he sat on the altar, everybody was coming, the devotees, they understood that, the Lord is now going to exhibit his Ishwara Bhav. So what they did was they all started bringing like thousands and thousands of pots of Ganges water, right? And they're bringing this Ganges water to do Abhishek for him. So a whole lot of the women were carrying the water on their heads in several pots, and they were bringing it. And they were putting it in rows because there was like thousands and thousands of pots. So from where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was sitting, there was one girl. Her name was Duki, right? So Duki, this is how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Mahaprakash Leela begins. That Duki started to put all the pots in rows so that it's convenient for the pujaris to take and bathe Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So that was like an insignificant service. She was just straightening the pots and setting them nicely for the convenience of the others. And she wasn't coming close to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu noticed that service out of his magnanimity. And he asked Srivas Pandit, who's that girl? So the Srivas said, she's the daughter of a maidservant, one of the maidservants. Her name is Duki. Duki means sadness, right? So generally in those days, if a woman had several miscarriages, so she would, have lost her babies, and finally, when she becomes impregnated with she gives birth to a child, she would call the child Duki, Duki. And the reason they would call the child Duki, which is sadness, imagine calling your child sadness, Duki, was the folklore sort of story behind calling a child Duki would be that Yamaraj, when Yamaraj checks your files and say, oh, your name's Duki, he'll feel sorry and he'll say, oh, let her be. He won't take her because Yamaraj took the previous babies. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he said, I hereby rename her as Suki, means happiness. So then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, after that, he started to exhibit how even though he would be bleeding, etc., and appear to have a regular material body, he is the supreme transcendental personality of Godhead. And he called Srivas and he said, Srivas, do you remember that you were in the classroom and the teacher was teaching something and he made reference to the Srimad Bhagavatam as your reference book? And you, because you're a devotee at heart, you became so enamored by this hearing of the Srimad Bhagavatam that you went into a trance. And because you went into a trance-like state, you fainted, and everybody was sort of teasing you, was thinking what happened to you, and they weren't understanding what was the actual thing going on in your consciousness. At that time, you got out, you eventually got out of your trance, went home, you took the Srimad Bhagavatam, you opened it, and you, just by touching the Srimad Bhagavatam, by reading it, tears flowed incessantly from your eyes, being connected to this Krishna conscious knowledge in the pages of the Bhagavatam. And at that time, do you know that that feeling of intense love that you are feeling towards the Supreme Lord, your Istadev, was actually coming into your heart by my mercy? Now, Srivas hadn't told that incident to anybody, right? So when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was telling that, he was able to understand that this is Mahaprabhu outside, but he's also inside me as the Param Atma. Then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to um, um, Gangadas, right? So Gangadas was the teacher there, and the spiritual master or teacher, And he said to Gangadas, "Do you remember when the dacoits were coming and they had invaded your village and they were raping all the women and killing all the men, etc.? You, Gangadas, you took your wife and your daughters, your beautiful young daughters, and you went to the Ganga and you wanted a boat in the night to cross. And at that time, all the murderers and prostitutes come out in that region. And you never got a boatman to row across the Ganga that to escape all of the bad activities that were happening in the village. At that time, mysteriously out of the darkness, a boatman appeared and willingly took you safely across the torrential flow of the Ganga and delivered you safely to the other side. Do you know who that boatman was? That boatman was me, what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told Gangadas. And then, Gangadas just fell down, And then he called Kolavecha Sridhar, and he told Kolavecha Sridhar, you are the poor person whom I steal the plantain leaves from. I always come and mess up with your selling of buttermilk that, you execute for your maintenance and to uphold your vow that 50% of whatever you get, you're going to use for the worship of the Ganga. Do you know who I am? And then he showed a form of the cowherd boy surrounded by cows, of Shamsundar Krishna, his original form. So he showed that form. As Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Kolavecha Sridhar saw the form of Krishna. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu showed that although you never think that even though he was, bleeding and he was exhibiting certain symptoms of suffering, his body is none other than that of the transcendental supreme personality of Godhead. So by that pastime, I hope that answers your question. Thank you. So he's the complete whole, and his mind and body and he himself are all one and the same. So Krishna, his whole body is synonymous. There's no difference between the parts of his various bodies. And Prabhupada goes on to say in the Brahma Samhita 5.1, there is a similar description of the Supreme Lord. He is described there as Sachit Ananda Vigraha, which means that he is the eternal form fully representing the transcendental existence of knowledge and bliss. As such, he does not require a separate body or mind as we do in the material existence. The Vedic literatures clearly states that the Lord's transcendental body is completely different from ours. Thus, he is sometimes described as formless. That means that he has no form like ours and that is devoid of a form we can conceive of. Our perceptions are limited to material things. But Krishna's form, his senses are completely transcendental. It's beyond this strata that we are familiar with. Um, Now, Krishna's hands and his can do the function of his mouth. Krishna's mouth, Krishna's eyes can do the function of his mouth. All different parts of Krishna's body are not limited to just, like our eyes are limited to seeing. It cannot taste something. But Krishna, at a glance, he tastes, he accepts an offering. In the ninth chapter of Bhagavad Gita, in the purport, I think, of the last verse, Prabhupada explains there, somewhere around there in the end of the ninth chapter, that Krishna is able to eat through his eyes, right? But sometimes Krishna will eat through his mouth. There are many pastimes of how Krishna's mouth becomes messed up with the offering. If they offer a deity of Krishna, and we come through different pastimes like that just now. In the Brahma Samhita 532, it is further stated that with each and every part of his body, he can do the work of the other senses. This means the Lord can walk with his hands, accept things with his legs, see with his hands and feet, eat with his eyes, in this, etc. In the Shruti mantras, it's also said that although the Lord has no hands and legs like ours, he has different types of hands and legs by which he can accept all that we offer him and run faster than anyone. These points are confirmed in the eighth mantra through the use of the word sukram or omnipotent. So Krishna's legs, they can actually run faster. How come? When Krishna came as Vamanadev, he was a young dwarf, but he could stretch with 3 steps of land. He could penetrate the universe with 2 steps of land, right? So if he has to walk, you have to walk across the road, it takes a long time, right? Sometimes you think, oh my God, I misjudged the time, and you got to run. But for Krishna, it's very easy. If you take the Krishna book and you read all of the pastimes, become cognizant of what happened in sequential order, and you go to Vrindavan and you think, today I'm going to live a day like Krishna. He was at Govardhan Hill in the morning, and the next, by midday, he was at meeting Radharani at a certain place in Yavat, etc. And you try to follow that journey as a human being, you will see that actually it's not really possible. Krishna was able to do it. One reason was because the land is like a lotus and is a devotee. It fulfills Krishna's desire by opening and closing like a lotus flower. The other is that Krishna can traverse at a speed faster than any one of us. He's in control of time. So his hands and legs are like that. So Krishna can eat with any part of his body, in other words. The deity is not different from Krishna. The Lord's worshipable form, Archa Vigraha, which is installed in temples by authorized acharyas who have realized the Lord in terms of Mantra 7, is not different from the original form of Krishna. The Lord's original form is that of Krishna, and Sri Krishna expands himself into the unlimited number of forms, such as Baladev, Rama, Nishinga, and Varahadev. All of these forms are one and the same personality of Godhead. Similarly, the Archa Vigraha worshipped in temples is also an expanded form of the Lord. By worshipping the Archa Vigraha, he can at once approach the Lord, one can at once approach the Lord, who accepts the service of a devotee by his omnipotent energy. Very often, people will say, why do I have to go to the temple? Why must I come and see the deity of the Lord? It's not about you going to see the deity, it's about giving yourself the opportunity for Krishna's glance to fall upon you. Because 2 things happen when you go to a temple. Krishna sees you and you see him. And when you stand in front of him and let his gaze bathe your entire form, something is happening to you. There is something happening to you. So therefore, it's recommended by our acharyas that you chant in front of Krishna. When you go and stand in front of the deities, you respectfully look at them from the foot onwards up like that. The Nectar of Devotion explains that if you want to become intelligent, you become you become that servant who takes darshan from the feet of the Lord upwards, like that, from the left hand side of the altar when you face the altar. So this deity form of the Lord is non different from Krishna. Now, there are so many stories that that one can say to prove this point, right? I would like to say, since the posters for the Ratha Yatra in Indonesia is up, I was thinking of this one pastime of Lord Jagannath. Lord Jagannath, he is especially, you know, very interactive with his devotees. So there was a great personality in our line called Jayadev Goswami. So Jayadev Goswami wrote the Gita Govinda. And these prayers, you see, Jayadev Goswami, he and his wife Padmavati, they used to take turns to recite these beautiful verses of the Gita Govinda that they themselves had composed. So sometimes he would recite and she would dance, and sometimes she would recite the verses. So these verses were only known between these two. So one time, Jayadev Goswami, to cut a long story short, he decided that how nice it would be if I could offer these verses to Lord Jagannath. So he started writing these verses. You see what happened? Every night they used to read these verses. Before they put the Lord to sleep, they would recite the Gita Govinda verses. And the verses would be so amazing that the pujari would recite it. And it was going on for thousands and thousands of years. Then what happened was the king of Orissa, he decided to write, also compose a Gita Govinda. So he composed, according to his realization, a new edition of the Gita Govinda. So he brought it, and he's the king of Orissa. So he told, they control the temple practically. So he came and he said to the pujari, now you can, for so long you've been reading Jayadev's one, now you can read mine. So the pujari said, okay, but for thousands of years, we've been Lord Jagannath's been accepting these prayers, but okay, we'll accept yours and offer it and see what the Lord, uh, what's the response. So that night, they took the two copies of the Gita Govinda and they placed it in front of Lord Jagannath when he was, when they offered him his resting place. And the next morning, when they came, the king's copy had been torn beyond repair, right? And Jayadev Goswami's one was touching the body of the Lord. So they told the king. And the king, he wanted to commit suicide. So he went and he said he better commit suicide. Then Lord Jagannath appeared to him. And, it's a long story, but it's not part of today's class. They came to a compromise. But regarding Lord Jagannath's attachment to hearing these prayers, one night the pujari forgot to recite these prayers. So then what happened was um, Lord Jagannath knew, because his senses are not limited. When you close the altar room door, he's not limited to that space. He could perceive that the gardener's daughter was doing some work for Lord Jagannath in the garden, her father's area of service. And while doing that, she was just singing these verses of the Gita Govinda in such a beautiful devotional manner that Jagannath could not contain himself to stand on the altar. So, what he did was that he went out into the garden and he was watching this girl and he was hiding behind the bushes. And as she traversed through the garden in doing her service, Jagannath was following and hiding. And then the whole night passed like that. And when it was morning time, Jagannath knew that this is now Mangal Arati time. The pujari is going to enter to wake me up. So at that time, Jagannath just entered he just he ran back, and in his haste, he dragged a few things because he ended up on the altar just before the pujari opened the curtains to enter. Then that day, that morning, the king came to take darshan of the Lord, and the king saw, to his utter dismay, that there were pieces of thorn bushes. The Lord's cloth was in total disarray. It was torn. And, so he asked the pujaris, did you boys worship, the Lord last night? Did you do everything according to the regular standards? So they said, yes, yes. And so he called them and he showed them. He said, "Is this you men are now eligible for death row because you're not worshiping the Lord properly." And at that time, uh, they said, "No, we put Lord Jagannath to bed. We did everything normally." Then the king was not satisfied. So he went back to his palace, and when he was resting, Jagannath appeared to him and said, "The reason you saw all of that was," and he narrated the story of how he heard the devotees chanting these songs so devotionally, the gardener's daughter, and he went in there, and it's in such and he sort of mapped out on which part of the garden this happened, and he said, if you go there, you will see evidence that my cloth is on those thorn bushes. And when he went out, sure enough, he went and he saw in the garden, according to his dream, yes, it corresponded with the cloth that the Lord was wearing. And sure enough, those thorn bushes from that particular area were strewn on the floor around the deity. And the Lord had told him in his dream that to save me all of the trouble, please arrange for that girl to come and sing the verses of Gita Govinda for me so I don't go out. So Jayadev Goswami, he actually arranged, before that, he arranged that he wrote the verses. And it's a nice story, which I'm also cutting short. I'm not saying the entire pastime, but he wrote these verses on 12 saris. And they used that they would touch that to the body of the Lord every night. So that particular night, the pujari forgot to do that. So that's why he went and got his solace from hearing the Gita Govinda, where it was being broadcast for his pleasure. So, yeah, footnote is that unless one is free from lust, one should not read that Shastra. So, just in case those of you listening online are Googling it very quickly, please put a pause on it and keep listening to the Isopanisad. Eventually, we'll get there. um, so, we read this purport, right? Then the Archer Vigraha of the Lord descends at the request of the Acharyas, the holy teachers, and works exactly in the original way of the Lord by virtue of the Lord's omnipotence. Foolish people who have no knowledge of the Ishopanishad, of any of the other Shruti mantras, consider the Archer Vigraha, which is worshipped by pure devotees, to be made of material elements. This form may be seen as material by the imperfect sense eyes of foolish people or Kanishta adhikaris. But such people do not know the Lord, being omnipotent and omniscient, can transform matter into spirit and spirit into matter as he desires. Sometimes when you go out preaching, people say, you people do so much things, for the deity. You put the deity to sleep, you offer the deity 6 six, food offerings, etc. Isn't that waste of money? Because, do you really believe God is living in that? So then you ask them, is God living everywhere? They say, yeah, you accept God is omnipotent. Sure, he's everywhere. I don't need to go to the temple. That is normally the answer they give you. Then you say, if God is everywhere, why can't he be present in the stone as well? Right? And there are so many stories like that Muslim tailor in that tailors for Shri Shri Radha Rasbihari in Juhu. he has been the tailor for those deities for so many years since they've been inaugurated for worship at that place. However, periodically he has to go in, despite having samples of the outfits for so many years that he's been reproducing, he has to go in and he has to measure those deities, right? Because and sometimes the devotees ask him, so long you're sewing, why you have to still go with your measuring tape? Says because you're feeding him too much. The outfit's not having the proper fit, so you have to make the proper adjustments. Now, this is also possible for um, the deity of Srila Prabhupada, because when Srila Prabhupada was installed, in his life-size Murti form in New Brindavan, West Virginia, in America, um, he appeared in the dream of one person, a regular non devotee sort of tourist lady, white lady, that came to the temple. And His Holiness Shivaram Swami wrote this story in one of his Sri Vyasa Puja offerings to Prabhupada. And he said at that time in New Vrindavan, things were not going right in the temple. People, they were introducing different standards, and things were just going a bit down. So Prabhupada appeared in this lady's consciousness when she was standing in front of him. She just heard a voice in her head saying, "Take my shoes, take my shoes." And she was a lady who never stole in all her life. And she's now a tourist in a holy place, and she's seeing Prabhupada's shoes, in front of his Vyasa son. And she's hearing this voice in her head, "Take my shoes, take my shoes." So she tried to avoid it, and it kept like ringing in her consciousness, "Take my shoes, take my shoes," and with greater urgency. So she kind of, without anybody looking, took that Prabhupada's shoes, and she kept it with her. She never told anybody. She hid it in her handbag, and years later, Srila Prabhupada, when the temple, got back into ISKCON's proper standards and management, etc., Srila Prabhupada appeared in the dream of this old lady. She was still alive, and said, "Give me back my shoes." So she went back to the temple. No, she actually put it in the post, and she sent it with the letter to the devotees. And she sent the shoes back. And then His Holiness Shivaram Swami, when he wrote that in his offering, he was saying Prabhupada is ever present in his deity also. So the deity is a very special thing. It's not simply earth, water, fire, air, and ether, coming together like that. There's a special potency in that. Um, in the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada continues 9, 11, 12. The Lord regrets the fallen condition of men with little knowledge who deride him because he descends like a man into this world. Krishna says in that verse, "Fools deride me when I descend." Such is a very handy verse when you're preaching and people deride the Lord. You say, "I'm not surprised by your behavior because Krishna predicted that this would happen." And then you quote this verse. Such poorly informed persons do not know the omnipotence of the Lord. Thus, the Lord does not manifest himself in full to the mental speculators. He can be appreciated only in proportion to one's surrender to him. The fallen condition of the living entities is due entirely to forgetfulness of their relationship with God. So when a person's consciousness is so covered and they haven't made the endeavor to reawaken the consciousness by the process of Krishna consciousness, then one will perceive stone. But if one, with greater faith approaches the deity as the Supreme Lord standing in front of one, then what happens is that deity reciprocates accordingly. And there's unlimited stories. But in specific, for now, this picture is a picture of the deity Shirachara Gopinath, right? So Shirachara Gopinath, he stole the kheer for Madhavendra Puri. So this deity had the kheer, an offering of kheer. Kheer is like sweet rice. No, it's like milk boiled with sugar until it's like condensed milk. And they make a very special variety in this particular temple. And Madhavendra Puri was visiting. He was on, he was visiting for a specific purpose, and he came in the glories of the kheer that's offered here is known far and wide. You know that this specific deity's Mahaprasad offering is the best. So Madhavendra Puri was thinking, I wonder if I would be able to taste this kheer, silently standing in front of the deity. He thought, I wonder if I'd ever get an opportunity to taste the kheer so I know how to prepare it for Gopal in my deity, in the deity that he's worshipping. That was the deity that was on top of Govardhan Hill, etc. And he found in the Chandan log like that. So Madhavendra Puri was thinking like that. And when he was thinking like that, Krishna, who can perceive our thoughts that are happening currently, our thoughts that will happen in the future, our thoughts that happen in the past that we forgot about, Krishna can perceive all of this, right? And he understanding, because then after that, Madhavendra Puri thought, oh my Lord, how fallen am I that I'm meditating on your offering prior to you eating the sweet rice. I'm actually so fallen. So he left the temple, he went to the marketplace, and some obscure place, he sat and he started chanting because he was in repentance for his meditating on the Lord's offering. And when he did that, um, Shirachara Gopinath became even more pleased by his behavior. So when the pujari closed the curtains, Gopinath stole a pot of kheer and he hid it behind the curtain. And when the pujari did whatever he had to do, remove the offering, wipe the floor, did the arati, then close the curtain, offered the resting place for the Lord's midday rest, Gopinath appeared in the pujari is feeling sleepy and went to take a midday siesta nap. And in his dream, Gopinath appeared and said, I kept a pot of kheer for my great devotee Madhavendra Puri. The head pujari had no understanding of who Madhavendra Puri was. So he said, he is in such and such place near the marketplace. Go and find him and take this pot that I've kept for him. It's by the curtain. So head pujari went. He took the plate of the pot of kheer. He went to the marketplace and he said, "Who is that person that's known as Madhavendra Puri? Who is that person as Madhavendra Puri?" Screaming all over the marketplace. Then Madhavendra Puri made himself known to the head pujari, and he said, he paid his obeisances to Madhavendra Puri. And he said, Gopinath has saved this for you. Madhavendra Puri, was so touched by Gopinath's reciprocation with his thought that he took it, and not wanting to get any more fame, or now everyone's going to say, oh, you're so special, God saved a pot of kheer for you. Madhavendra quickly disappeared, because a real devotee doesn't want to be glorified for anything. So it's not, oh yeah, you see, I got the kheer from God saved, kind of saved it for me. No, he was a very pure hearted person. So thus this deity became known as Shirachora Gopinath, the one who chor means thief, and Kir is the first name. So the Gopinath that stole the kheer. So that's how he reciprocates with his devotees. So there's like that. There's so many stories, of deities that reciprocate. In this mantra, as well as many other Vedic mantras, Prabhupada continues in the purport, it is clearly stated that the Lord has been supplying goods to the living entities from time immemorial. A living being desires something, and the Lord supplies the object of that desire in proportion to one's qualification. The important thing is in proportion to one's qualification. So it's not that, oh, I'm desiring the Lord's kachori, He doesn't give it to me. I distributed X and I did this X, Y, and Z service. Maybe he's not present in the DT. No, no. According to one's qualification, Madhavendra Puri was more than qualified. And a living so if a man wants to be a high court judge, he must acquire not only the necessary qualifications, but also the consent of the authority who can award the title of high court judge. The qualifications in themselves are insufficient for one to occupy the post. It must be awarded by some superior authority. So the qualification is not enough. You need a superior authority to be, that's why we follow the Guru Parampara, right? That Srila Prabhupada, in his lineage, is our link to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And and we have seen that anyone who delivers Prabhupada's teachings as a bona fide postman performs the same job. For example, you may take a book and you may not be qualified, but you give it to a person and that person may become a devotee, and become a very good devotee at that. So you have actually linked someone back to Krishna. So similarly, the Lord awards enjoyment to the living entities in proportion to their qualifications. But good qualifications in themselves are not sufficient to enable one to receive awards. The mercy of the Lord is also required, right? And Krishna may not come directly, but he will act through a Vaishnav, right, who you least expect. In the case of Bilvamangal Thakur, it was the prostitute Chintamani, right, that actually helped him reconnect with Krishna. So Krishna can choose to act through anybody. You find that when you're out on the street, like for many years, I did the service of book distribution, and I can say tangibly that when you're feeling proud of yourself as a book distributor, that is the day when your ego becomes slashed and your results are not really anything to gloat about, right? But the minute you start recognizing and changing that attitude, there's a different result that comes about. Um, and that is the mercy of the Lord. So just now we're going into the month of Kartik. On the 23rd of October, the month of Kartik starts. And we'll be hearing time and time again this pastime of how the ropes were 2 fingers too short. It requires your endeavor and Krishna's mercy. So in anything, it's not only your qualifications, it's how pleased Krishna is and when he is pleased, right? We can't say, oh, I'm chanting for the last 5 days nicely. Why is Krishna not reciprocating? Krishna does things in his time. Then Srila Prabhupada goes on to say in the purport, ordinarily the living being does not know what to ask from the Lord, nor which post to seek. When the living being comes to know his constitutional position, however, he asks to be accepted into the transcendental association of the Lord in order to render transcendental loving service unto him. Unfortunately, living beings under the influence of material nature ask for many other things, and they are described in the Bhagavad Gita. The 4 types of people that surrender to Krishna. In verse chapter 2, text 41 in the Bhagavad Gita, it's explained as having a divided or splayed intelligence. Spiritual intelligence is one, but mundane intelligence is diverse. So this brings us to Krishna being cognizant of our needs when we need it, when we're qualified, when he needs to reciprocate with us. Because we've been asking him for things for lifetimes and lifetimes, right? Hopefully, we were sane enough to approach Krishna for whatever our needs were. So it brings me to the story that His Holiness Mahavishnu Maharaj once told of a sweeper, right? So there was an honest sweeper in the temple of Dwarikadish. Krishna is also called Dwarikadish. So the sweeper, in all of his humility and simplicity, when was used to sweep the temple on a daily basis. That was his dedicated service. And that service was very endearing to the Lord. So this man, he was very simple and with childlike innocence, he would talk to the deity of Dwarkadish. So one time he said to Lord Dwarkadish that, my Lord, you're standing here and I witness that people are coming in like consistently, and they come and they talk to you, they approach you for different things, etc. Said, I actually feel that you may be feeling a bit tired. So if you want, I can stand there in disguise while you take a break. Out of his simplicity and his love. So Lord Dwarkadish reciprocated and he said, sure, but remember one thing, your position is to simply stand there and do not interfere, do not speak, do not say anything. Have faith that I know what each person needs. So he said, sure, my Lord, I just want you to have a break. So then Lord Dwarkadish said, okay, thank you very much. I'll be back in the afternoon. Only for a day. The sweeper is standing as Dwarkadish, well concealed. He has the Lord Dwarkadish blessed him, to look like him. And then in came a rich man. The rich man came, he prayed to the Lord. What did he pray for? He said, that my Lord, I thank you very much for all the wealth you have brought my way, and I pray that my business will continue to be successful. And he put his palms together, he bowed his head, he prayed, and he forgot his wallet, loaded wallet, there, and he went away. So the sweeper, he understood. He couldn't. Lord Dwarkadish said, "Don't speak to anybody." But so he said, "Oh, okay, maybe the guy will come back for his wallet." So then a poor man came. A poor man came. He had one coin. He put it in the hundi box, and he prayed to the Lord. My Lord, I'm so grateful for everything you've given to me, and whatever is mine is yours, right? And my family is lacking in few things, but whenever you see fit, you can make the arrangements. But I, know that I am completely yours. So when he opened his eyes, he saw the full wallet there. He thought this is the Lord's reciprocation with him. So he took the wallet and he went away happily. Then the guy, the sweeper, he saw this, but he realized he couldn't speak. Then a sailor came in, and the sailor prayed, "Oh my Lord, I'm so happy for everything you've given to me in life. Um, now I'm leaving on my journey on the next ship. I pray that you will protect me." So then, just as he uttered this prayer for protection, the police came in and the police arrested him. And the rich man was following also, and he said, "You must have taken the wallet. Hardly anyone came today to the temple, so I just left now, and you must have give me back my wallet." And he was demanding his wallet. So the sailor said, "No, I don't have it." And the police were dragging him to take him to the cell. So then the sweeper, as Dwarkadish, felt inclined. He said, "The Lord will not have let such an unjust thing happen," because the sailor said, "My Lord, you know me, you've seen everything. Um, uh, how come you're allowing an innocent person like me to be arrested?" So then the so-called Dwarikadish, he spoke. And what he said was, he said, "Your wallet was not taken by the sailor, it was taken by some, the poor man that came in before him. So they left off to go see him. So in the evening, as arranged, Lord Dwarkadish came back to resume his position. And at that time, the sweeper said, "My Lord, I think you'll be pleased. I was here and this is what happened. And I didn't let the innocent person become arrested." So Lord Dwarkadish said, "I know, just like our Prabhupada is saying here in the purport, the Lord knows the desire of each person and He knows when to fulfill it." He said, "I knew that rich man, why did you should have had more faith in my words and simply obeyed what I had told you. You see, the bigger picture, because Krishna always sees the bigger picture. Unfortunately, we just see the smaller picture. The bigger picture is that this rich man, he deals in black money. So by unbegotten ill means, he acquires all of this money, and he has a lot of money. And he came with this loaded wallet, and he put one note into the hundi box, and he kept everything else for his enjoyment. So the old saying, Krishna doesn't see what you give, he sees what you hold back. So he said, the poor man, he's a pure hearted Brahmana. The one coin that he put into the hundi box today was the last of his assets, was the last of his money. So he gave his all. I wanted him to take that money and use it in his service so that it could be purified and benefit the other guy. And he said the sailor was gonna board that ship, which was going to meet with a disaster. He came to me and he prayed for protection. So his being arrested was his protection by my arrangement so that he doesn't have to meet with that disaster. So sometimes, like the humble sweeper, with our limited knowledge, we may think we know better, that we are protecting this person, etc. But no, Krishna has the vision of knowing our future, our past, and our present, and knowing what is best for each one of us. So when we go and pray before the Lord, we should not make demands. We should simply leave it in the Lord's hands for and if He so desires. Then Srila Prabhupada continues in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 5, text 30 and 31. It is stated that those who are captivated by temporary beauties of the external energy forget the real aim of life, which is to go back to Godhead. Forgetting this, one tries to adjust things by various plans and programs. But this is like chewing what has already been chewed. Nonetheless, the Lord is so kind that He allows the forgetful living entity to continue in this way without interference. Thus, this mantra of the Isopanisad uses the very appropriate word yatata. How you say that? Yatatatyataha, indicating that the Lord rewards the living entities just in pursuance of their desires. If a living being wants to go to hell, the Lord allows him to do so without interference. And if he wants to go back home, back to Godhead, the Lord helps him. So a person can have so many desires and they're all in queue because every time you see the Lord, every time you approach the Lord, you're approaching the Lord for this, that, and the other thing. So we have a huge queue of requests we've made in the past, etc. And Krishna, he's got an expert sort of filing system. He knows everything, date, time, etc., when it was all made. Like Dhruva Maharaj. Dhruva Maharaj prayed for a kingdom that was greater than his grandfather Uttanapad, right? And when he met Krishna, he had that moment's darshan with Krishna when he went to the forest as a 5-year-old boy and he was meditating with determination. Dhruv means determination. Then Krishna appeared before him, and Krishna said, Krishna gave him that kingdom, a bigger kingdom than what his grandfather had. And at that time, he uttered the prayer that, my Lord, I have been praying to you for pieces of broken glass, but you have given pearl, like pearl, something so much more valuable. You've given your darshan, and by touching the conch shell to Dhruva Maharaj's head, he was able to offer prayers to the Lord. He got realization of what his real needs are, other than a kingdom more glorious than Uttanapad's. So Krishna is so amazing that although our requests are so blunt, they're so imbued with things, with illusion, that it's not really perhaps what we may need. Krishna will allow that to become fulfilled. And in the case of a devotee, it will be purifying. Sudama didn't want the wealth. He had excessive renunciation in his character. And Krishna purified that by supplying the wealth that his wife wanted. Right? So Krishna is that type of personality that when he gives you something, even that is purifying. There's a word in this verse that we came across when we read read the verse, apapa vidam, right? How Krishna does not become contaminated, and Prabhupada is going to touch on that later on. God is read loudly, Prabhupada.
God is described as very greatest of all. No one is greater than or equal to him. Other living beings are described here as beggars who ask goods from the Lord. The Lord supplies the things the living entities desire. If the entities were equal to the Lord in potency, if they were omnipotent and omniscient, there would be no question of their begging from the Lord, even for so-called liberation. Real liberation means going back to God. Liberation as conceived of by an impersonalist is a myth, and begging for sense gratification has to continue eternally unless the beggar comes to his spiritual senses and realizes his constitutional position.
So mostly, Prabhupada explained in about few slides back that the demands of the devotee is like on the kanista level, that you stand before the Lord and you make your demands. So we're in that mood of a beggar. One is, if we were God ourselves, or it defeats the purpose that we are God, because we are actually beggars. We're dependent on God. That's why we're always asking him for things. We want mukti from him. We want so many things from him, material things, etc. So God has more power than us. And Krishna, he supplies these things, but when the devotee wants to go back home, back to Godhead, he facilitates this very nicely. You can actually do a test. If you come across a person who is, I've come across so many devotees that they came to a point in their lives where they prayed, my Lord, please show me the correct path, the purest path to your lotus feet. And sooner or later, they will come in contact with Srila Prabhupada's books or meet the devotees. Immediately when they start this thought pattern in their consciousness, that my Lord, whoever you are in your purest form, please lead me to the purest way I could reach you. You find that Krishna somehow or the other makes the arrangements. So many stories. My one friend told me he was thinking like this and he was walking his regular route in Pretoria, and all of a sudden he found himself, just taking another route that he never walked on before. And lo and behold, he landed right in front of the Sankirtan devotees distributing books. And he got a sense of self-realization, ready, then thought, wow, 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 this is what I'm looking for. And he got relinked to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So many stories like that of how Krishna actually, the moment somebody has the desire, everything happens by desire. So the moment a person starts to cultivate this desire, our business as servants of this Sankirtan mission is to try to stimulate that desire in people, to make them understand that what they're pursuing is temporary, there is something higher, like that. And then Krishna just takes over. Read, Aveshmu.
Only the Supreme Lord, Krishna is 5,000 years ago. He does take his full manifestation as analogy of God and his ways. In his childhood, he killed many powerful demons such as Agarusa,
Agasura.
Agasura, Bakasura, and
Shakatasura.
Sakasura, and there was no question of his having acquired such power through any
Extraneous.
extraneous endeavors. He lifted Govinda, Govinda and filled out, practice, practicing weightlifting. He danced with the gopis without social restriction and without reproach. Although the gopis approached him with a with a paramour's feeling of love, the relationship between the gopis and Lord Krishna was worshipped by Lord Chaitanya, who was a strict sannyasi and rigid follower of disciplinary regulation.
Yes. So Krishna is not limited to his. Thank you so much. Is not limited to his form, because his form is not limited. When Krishna was just a baby, he, Trunavata picked him up. The whirlwind demon picked him up, and Krishna, if he had a material form, do you know when you go to the Himalayas on pilgrimage, or you climb a mountain like Mount Kilimanjaro or whatever is around these days, sometimes if your lungs is not strong because the air gets thinner as you go higher, then you have an issue with the breathing. However, when you go to the Krishna book and you read how Krishna was lifted so high in the air, as a small child, he never became affected by this. Rather, he affected Trunavata. Krishna, as a small boy, he entered Agasura's throat and he expanded himself. He was not limited to that form as a little child. So even though he appeared as a little baby, he was able to perform activities that not even a great personality could do. So in the pastimes of all of these asuras, Shakatasura, the cart demon, Baka, the bird demon, Agasura, the snake demon, you find that Krishna's ability to deal with that circumstances surpassed the ability of a young child, although Krishna was appearing as a young child. And Prabhupada goes on to more graphically say that he picked up Govardhan Hill without practicing weightlifting, right? That with his little finger of his left hand, even if you tell me to use the stronger fingers, what to speak of the little finger of my right hand to pick up something heavy, I will not succeed. But Krishna could do that because his little finger is transcendental, an entire mountain. And then Krishna could appear in a different form apart from the form that is standing in front of the mountain. So he's not limited to one form at one time. He can appear in several different places at the same time. In the Rasa Leela, he expanded himself into various few million forms, right, to accompany each gopi. So Krishna's unlimitedness and his ability uh, to show that he's not like us in a material form with so many limitations is always very visible in his pastimes. Um,
To confirm the Lord is always pure, Chaitanya, twice infinite, and empty scepter, and above every them, both pros and left. He is antiseptic in the sense that even an impure thing can become purified by touching him. The word prophylactic refers to the power of his association. As mentioned in Bhagavad Gita 9:30 and 31, the devotee may appear to be Sudachar,
not well behaved in the beginning, but he should be accepted as pure because he is on the right path. This is due to the prophylactic nature of the Lord's association.
So sometimes people join the movement, and obviously we're coming with tons and tons of dirt in our heart from so much of conditioning through so many lifetimes, right? So the behavior may be very disturbing in a regular society. Like one time in Srila Prabhupada's movement, in the early days, one person, he would come and he would simply lie. There was like a pathway where you enter into the temple. So he would lie across that pathway with his legs outstretched, blocking that pathway. It was so unclean, unkept, and lazy behavior. And then the devotees had heard that Prabhupada had said that the temple is not a place for lazies and crazies. So they wrote to Srila Prabhupada and they said, Prabhupada, what must we do? And they called this guy Crazy Peter. So he said to Prabhupada, this guy, this is how he behaves. So Satsvarup Maharaj wrote to Prabhupada and said, we don't know what to do with him because, he's repellent to the cultured guests that come and that we expect to come to the temple. He creates a bad impression. So he had a whole list of things why this person's behavior is so unacceptable. And Prabhupada's reply was in one sentence: what's the matter? Can't you tolerate? That person, Crazy Peter, Prabhupada knew because, Prabhupada is, I can say, supernatural in his understanding of things. So Prabhupada, due to his purity, so Prabhupada said, what's the matter? Can't you tolerate? And this person, Peter, so the devotees had to tolerate Crazy Peter. And Crazy Peter, by the mercy of Prabhupada's telling the devotees to tolerate him, he became the esteemed Kushakrata Das in our movement, who learned, became a profound Sanskrit scholar and translated the Goswami's books into English that we are studying these days. Crazy Peter became that, by the influence of Srila Prabhupada and by Prabhupada's mercy. So here Prabhupada is saying that a devotee may appear to be Sudachar, not well behaved in the beginning, but he should be accepted as pure because he's on the right path. After so many lifetimes, a person has come onto the right path. Sometimes it's so easy to say, oh, this person is too troublesome. Let's ban the person. He can't join us in this, that, whatever. And, Prabhupada is saying, because Prabhupada has a different vision. Prabhupada, one time on a morning walk, he swung his cane and he was surrounded by lots of the leaders in the society. And he said, all of you have come to discourage. I have come to encourage. Right? So Prabhupada's degree of compassion and understanding of this concept and of giving people, seeing hope in people is so amazing and is worth trying to emulate, with the correct understanding, as opposed to just doing things for our what suits us and not understanding that people are coming after many lifetimes, they've reached the right path, don't push them away. Prabhupada said it's a mad hospital. We all come there, we're diseased to different degrees. Sometimes said it's like the shower. We all come to get clean. So if you're in the shower, can I say you're so dirty? No, you're making the endeavor to get clean. I should rather, wait until you finish showering. So Krishna is known as Apapa Vidam, that he is not contaminated and is prophylactic, right? His association purifies. And Prabhupada is saying so nicely in the purport, the Lord is also a Papa Vidam because sin cannot touch him. Even if he acts in a way that appears to be sinful, such actions are all good, for there is no question of his being affected by sin. Because in all circumstances, he is Sudam, most purified, is often compared to the sun. right? And in a lecture, Prabhupada speaks on this Papa Vidam. He says, this is the most important part of this verse. No sin can pollute Krishna. There cannot be any sinful action. Your laws cannot restrict Krishna. For you, there may be so many restrictive laws. Sometimes less intelligent class of men, they criticize Krishna, how he enjoyed the company of so many young girls. They were the wives of other persons. So, how is it so? So, the answer was given that Krishna cannot be contaminated. Rather, anything that comes to Krishna, even when contaminated, becomes purified. And then he goes on to say that therefore, even Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came as a sannyasi and he worshipped that same Krishna and the gopis because he understood this, he was exhibiting this thing that Krishna is uncontaminated. If someone in this world goes after many women, some man, then we say he's inflicted with lust, to a great degree. But for Krishna, that was not so. Everything that comes in contact with Krishna becomes purified, even however fallen or sudachar, how is it? Suducha, so contaminated. Anything that comes into contact with Krishna becomes purified. We just don't know the time limit, right? So Prabhupada in conclusions explains, the sun extracts moisture from many untouchable places on the earth, yet it remains pure. In fact, it purifies obnoxious things by virtue of its sterilizing powers. If the sun, which is a material object, is so powerful, then we can hardly begin to imagine the purifying strength of the all-powerful Lord. For example, the point Prabhupada is making here, that the sun will shine on something dirty, it will evaporate it. But we don't say the sun is smelling. Like, for a long time, we had to stay in Hillbrow, and because we opened, the temple there in Hillbrow. And every morning and evening, Nanda Prabhu when he was temple president, would take us on Harinam for 20 minutes before breakfast and 20 minutes in the afternoon. So all the temple devotees would go on Harinam and return. And the smell in Hillbrow was none other than that of urine, 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 urine. And so when we had tangible experience of the sun coming out and shining, and it is evaporating the stinking urine, and but no one can say that the sun now is smelling of urine, right? Because the unclean substance of urine or muddy water that comes in contact with the sun becomes purified without affecting the sun. So Krishna, he's like that, right? And Krishna in his form as Vishnu resides within our heart as Paramatma, right? No matter how dirty the heart is, how dirty we are, Krishna chooses to be our indwelling witness and friend. Actually, the word Vishnu means one who enters, right? So everybody creates so many things, but no creator of any object has the power to enter into that object and keep it going, right? Even sometimes there's so many pastimes of how a devotee was certified by the doctor that, oh, okay, like in Mayapur, the child fell from a high place, and the head was cracked and all the gray matter of the brain got mixed up with the sand. And the doctor said, no, there's nothing we can do about this. And the parents kept praying to Lord Nishingadev. And Nishingadev's inside, his outside, is everywhere, right? And the child's brain got put in this soft gray matter meshed with sand, so delicate, all got put back into the child's head, and mysteriously, the child has no side effects of that having happened, healed completely. So, if Krishna wants to make it happen, his inside, his outside of every atom, of every person, he can make things happen. So, he will not be affected by it, but he will make it. As he so desires. So, to repeat the mantra's translation once again, such a person must factually know the greatest of all, the personality of Godhead, who is unembodied, omniscient, beyond reproach, without veins, pure and uncontaminated, the self sufficient philosopher who has been fulfilling everyone's desire since time immemorial. Thank you very much, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Do we have any questions, comments, or realizations to share? Yes, Prabhu.
Um, but knowing what's the right thing to pray for. Because in devotional service, sometimes you might think, Lord, please help me to get free from some bad quality. In that case, but then I was thinking about He knows what time and when it should happen. So should that prayer still be there? Because even we said the Acharya is like,
I was just going to say,
he's praying.
yes, we, as conditioned souls, we're allowed to construct a prayer on our own. Because what's the Sanskrit word for prayer?
Vandanam.
Vandanam. So, in the process of Vandanam, we approach Krishna the way we know. So, with all innocence, we can utter a prayer before the Lord. As one becomes more advanced, then one wants to know what is the correct mood to offer the prayer. So then one goes to the acharyas and one sees, okay, I have, it's true. This acharya is writing that my heart is in such a state and is reflecting on the consciousness of me, a conditioned soul. The reality of my situation is being pronounced in his prayer, so I might as well repeat it. So, yes, Krishna knows that it's there within our heart, and he knows when to rectify it. That's true. However, when a child can be suffering, but the mother may not attend to the child unless the child cries out. So, as children of the Supreme Lord, it behooves us to recognize that, oh, we have this fault. And it brings pleasure to the Lord that now there's realization in this living being that this is an obstacle and that education is there. And now, because it's not only that you become qualified, you need the authority of the Supreme Lord Prabhupada mentioned in the purport. So now he's approaching me and I will help. I'll turn it into Krishna karma and, take it away from him. So it's completely bona fide to do that, to approach Krishna to help one to become. But obviously, one should be very careful. I know of devotees, and my teacher in the Bhagavatam course, the Bhakti Vaibhava course, one of our teachers, Mother Narayani, she's a very, very amazing devotee. And she was telling us, she realized now, because she used to stay in Vrindavan at that time, she said, this place is so potent and the deities and Krishna hears your prayers so clearly in this place that she doesn't ask for anything because it can come. You may pray for some purification, it can come so quickly that, you may not be able to deal with it. So, gotta be careful. The best prayer is Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare. Yes, Prabhu, nothing.
Sometimes his that Dasa story is that from
yes. Yes, Prayala Prayodi Jaledritavan Sivedam. Yes, that prayer comes from the Gita Govinda, and and Srila Prabhupada has has introduced us to that. That we can chant. No problem with that. Anything else?
I was thinking what you just mentioned there about being on book distribution.
Yes.
This came from Harinam now.
Uh-huh.
And I was there. I had just two books in my hand. It was Science of Self-Realization and The Journey of Self-Discovery. And this feeling of, oh, I'm sure these books. Everybody likes these books. And I went like the whole time and nobody was taking them. I was stopping them and asking. Nobody was taking them. Then the closest I got was somebody He stopped right in the middle of the kirtan. It's so loud, you can't speak, and then he's just looking at the Prabhupada, and he reads the back, reads everything. So then I thought, okay, nice, and then he takes the book. Now he just takes his phone, takes a picture, and he gives the book. And then like the kirtan ended, everything ended, and then I just think, yeah, it's distributing. And then immediately somebody, I wasn't even like, at that time the devotees were starting to say, oh, what's the next part of the program? We're going to midnight for budgets and things. And then this person just comes to me and is like, hey, what's that book there? Give me that, let me see. And so, I know this person, I know this person. And even though he didn't even know like Prabhupada, and then he just like, okay, I'm taking it. And then I was just thinking about how you said, actually, when you feel like you can do it, then you can't. But
Yeah. When Krishna wants it to happen, it will happen. Very nice. Thank you for sharing.